Hello, everybody. We'll give it maybe a minute or two here while we let folks get into the call. We got quite a few registered attendees today, so we'll just give it a moment and then we'll get started. All right, maybe give it another 30 seconds here and then we'll jump in. I think we're still waiting on a few people, but more moments. All right, it is 10:02, so I think we should get started. First off, thanks for being here today. My name is Scott Siclari. I am the statewide compensation manager here at DPA and served as the project leader for the IT system maintenance study, as well as all the other system maintenance studies that we completed this year. We also have our total rewards director, Jessica Green, our compensation analyst, Jesse Hernandez, our senior compensation analyst, Terry Pickett, and we also have DPA's communications manager, Annabelle Asp, on the line. The purpose of today's meeting is for us to provide you with a summary of the process and outcomes of the study, and also to provide you an opportunity to ask questions and better understand how the study was completed. One quick reminder, all attendees are muted, so if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A, and we'll make sure that we answer them at the end of the presentation. So we'll review the agenda to get started. So first, we'll discuss the background and purpose of this study, as well as system maintenance studies in general. We'll go over the steps and the very high-level general timeline of the process. And then finally, we'll discuss the results and recommendations of the study. So this presentation is intended to be a high-level summary, so it should be relatively quick, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So system maintenance studies are the way that the state is able to update and maintain all or part of the pay structure and our classification system. So the Personnel Board rules define them as the process used to determine classes and or pay grades and to properly place all affected positions into new classes. So what that will typically include is a review of all affected positions across all state agencies where applicable. So for IT, we have a lot of classified IT positions at various state agencies. So we had a lot of study participants for this particular system maintenance study. This study was actually first proposed in 2019, which you may be aware of, but the purpose was to more accurately define and differentiate the different types of IT positions that we have around the state. But ultimately, implementation was canceled due to concerns related to that pandemic that we all went through. But in this year, we sort of revived the study, we completed it, and we had substantially similar findings, and we have substantially similar recommendations as what was done in 2019. We, of course, completed an updated market analysis, so we're not recommending the same pay ranges as in 2019, because we want to make sure we have current and competitive pay ranges. So in order to do that, we collaborated pretty extensively with OIT, and we also collaborated with most other state agencies that have, well, all state agencies that have classified IT positions, which actually includes almost every state agency. And we also collaborated with our institutes of higher education, which we call IHEs. So that's an acronym you'll hear me use a couple of times. So as far as the process goes, over the course of the whole study, we continually met with various representatives from the state agencies as well as the IHEs so that we could review that 2019 study and also discuss, more in depth. So I would understand, since I only arrived in April of last year, to discuss the different types of IT positions that we have around the state. So during that study, we drafted new class descriptions, we came up with class concepts, and we completed an updated market analysis so that we could assign pay ranges to each of the new series that have been proposed. And we'll talk more about those new series just a little bit later in the presentation. The draft class descriptions, they will soon be available on the DHR website. The ones that are available now will be just drafts. In the meantime, you can also find summaries of the new series in the job evaluation letter, which has already been distributed to agency HR directors. We'll also make these slides available on the DHR website. And although I think I said something different last week, we'll also be recording we are recording today's presentation. So you'll be able to view that if you would like to do so. So for purposes of reviewing pay ranges, we use the same generally accepted compensation best practices and processes that any other organization might use to analyze market data. We look at similar positions in the external labor market, and we also look at other jobs within the state's classified system when we're reviewing pay ranges. The sources of that market data included our third-party compensation consultant, Mercer. We also use surveys from other independent, reputable sources like Employers Council. And we also typically will collect data directly from other jurisdictions and government entities. And we usually do that through looking at official public websites. So once we completed our initial market analysis, the study team met again to discuss findings. We made some final recommendations, and that's when we began to prepare the job evaluation letter. So after today's meet and confer, we'll review your feedback, and then we'll publish the final job evaluation letter to the DHR website. And then implementation will occur on July 1st, 2024. So also, we're planning on sending out letters, actual physical letters to each impacted employee that will notify you of what your new classification will be, and it'll also include your new pay range. We won't be including any information in that letter about potential impact to your pay rate, and we won't be including any information about step placement in that letter. It will just include your new classification that will be implemented on July 1st and the new pay range for your new classification. And we'll be mailing those out sometime in either early or more likely mid-February. So be on the lookout for those. Now, just a quick reminder, I'm sure you're all well aware, the step pay program is going to be implemented on July 1st, 2024, of course, pending legislature approval of the governor's budget request. That's our big disclaimer. Placement in your step will be determined based on your time in your current class series. So that calculation will not be impacted by any system maintenance study. So it's still important, though, to remember that although the time in series classification isn't impacted, an employee's new pay rate, if they do receive a step increase, an employee's new pay rate will be determined based on their new pay range, not their current pay range. So I'll say that one more time. So the time in series calculation will not be impacted. However, that time in series calculation will be applied to your new pay range and not your current one. So for example, an employee who's currently classified as an IT technician, they've spent 4 years in the IT class series, so their time in class series calculation is 4. That employee is then updated to the Cybersecurity 3 classification on July 1st. That time in class series remains at 4, regardless of the change from the system maintenance study. That calculation of 4 is then applied to the pay range for Cybersecurity 3 rather than the pay range for an IT technician. So just wanted to mention that, although this presentation is not about steps. We wanted to mention these so that you'd understand how system maintenance studies interact and also how they don't interact with the step pay program. All right, so we'll talk about the results of the study. As I mentioned earlier, the study was previously completed in 2019, but was canceled due to concerns related to the COVID-19 pandemic. This year's study resulted in substantially similar findings and recommendations. The current IT series only has 4 classifications, and that is not typical in the market for the IT function. And what that does is it causes lots of challenges, but especially from the DHR compensation team standpoint, it creates a lot of challenges in terms of comparing our jobs and our pay ranges to the market data that we get from our various sources. So, for example, a position could be classified as an IT technician, but just based on the classification, we don't know whether that job is performing duties related to cybersecurity, infrastructure, development, a whole host of any other areas that we have within IT. And each of those different areas carry different labor market conditions. And that typically results in those different areas having different market rates. And that typically means that we'll usually want to assign different pay ranges for those areas. And right now we only have 4, so we can't do that. So the study proposes a new set of 10 different series, and those series are intended to more accurately define and differentiate the different types of IT positions that exist at the state. So we'll take a look at the summary of those new series on the next slide. So to the right here, you can see the list of the new series. All of these series will have 6 levels. We didn't list out all the, except for IT support and information technology. Those series will have 7 levels. We didn't list out all the pay ranges here just because this is actually going to create 62 new classifications. We do list all of those in the job evaluation letter, the JEL, we call it. But if we wanted to include it here, it wouldn't be very readable. So you'll also have access to the class concepts, the series descriptions, and I mentioned those pay ranges. Those are all published in the JEL. And then again, we'll have the full class descriptions in draft form. They'll be available following this meet and confer. And then we'll finalize those after the feedback period, which is slated to end on January 31st, excuse me. And what you can see that we've done here is we've taken the current single IT job series and we've split it into 10. And you can probably also recognize most of those terms. And each one describes a more specific area of responsibility within the IT function. So that's actually the last slide that we have for you to look at today. I want to just quickly share our contact information. Slide there. Yeah, and so you see my email address. We have Terry Pickett's email address there. Kendall is actually going to be out for a little while. She's out for a couple of months. So, in the meantime, you can email myself or Terry directly. If you have a question about steps, though, the better place to direct that to, other than your own internal HR teams, is you can email the step pay inbox that we have set up at DPA, and the address for that is dpa_steppay@state.co.us. So again, that's dpa_steppay, STEPPAY, at state.co.us. Yes, thank you for posting that. I forgot we did that yesterday too. So that's actually all we have. With that, we can get started with questions. I see, looks like we have a few that have come in already, so I'll read these out and we will get them answered. All right, so, all right, so question is, when you say job evaluation letters were already distributed to HR directors, who would have received those? If we would like to see a copy, is that possible? The answer is, to the second question, yes. Amber, I know we've worked together. You're at CSU. I don't know off the top of my head who would have. I don't remember who your HR director is, but let me just double check. Well, the JEL, the draft JELs will be posted on the DHR website, but again, I don't know off the top of my head who your HR director is, but if you looks like you might not know who that is. So why don't you actually shoot me an email and we can double check, make sure who that went to, and if at any rate you'll be able to find it on the DHR website, which we do have links to in the deck that will be posted, the slides.
Scott, I just put a link to the job evaluation letter in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Annabelle. All right, next one is, I have a question about the class series descriptions, specifically the July 1st, 2021 descriptions. So we may be talking about the 2019 descriptions there, but per the documentation regarding the IT Developer 1 position, in the description about the position under the concept of class, the statement is made, entry professional positions do not remain at this level indefinitely. However, since I have worked for the state since 2005, 19 years, I have never moved beyond my IT Pro 1 position. Will I eventually be able to move into an IT Pro 2 position? So I cannot speak to individual position classifications. We are not using those 2019 class descriptions. We've drafted new ones. The design of the levels and the design of the series are substantially similar, but we have made some changes. I will say that typically, when you think about the definition of what an entry level role is, usually those will, progress to other levels. However, that's one of the things that we have in the current single series that we don't really have a mechanism for doing that. If you're an IT professional, there's no IT professional 1, there's no IT professional 2, there's no IT professional 3, at least not in our actual classification system. I can't really speak to, working job titles or other things that might be used at different agencies. But again, those class descriptions are no longer applicable. We'll be posting new ones to the DHR website. Just had an IM come in, just want to double check it. All right. Are you telling us we should expect pay cuts? No. No one's pay will be reduced as a result of the system maintenance study. It is theoretically possible. I don't know off the top of my head if there are any individuals, but it is possible someone could end up above the maximum of their new pay range. I don't think that happened in many situations, but if it were, even then, rules around saved pay would apply, which again, I'm still getting used to all the rules at the state, but that means that the employee's pay rate would not be reduced for 3 years. And if their rate was still above the max of their pay range at that point, then it would be reduced. But no, I can strongly say that you should not expect a pay cut. Right. So does your current pay range and time in service determine where you're placed in your new classification? So good question. Class placements are determined based on the responsibilities and required qualifications of the position. Placements are not done based on the qualifications of individuals. They are done based on the responsibilities and requirements of the position. So that's something that's very important. And that's not just true for system maintenance studies. That's going to be true for any classification placement of any position. As an IT professional 1 cannot determine based on your breakdown if I am a developer webmaster. So yes, so those you will receive a letter in mid-February. We'll mail them out by mid-February, but it might take a little while. But that's where you'll see your new classification. If you kind of know what your duties are, you can probably take a look at the series and it might be obvious to you which one you're in. However, it's not just based on title. We only have, like, take IT professional. Folks in the IT professional class could be a developer, they could be a help desk support analyst, they could be an engineer, an IT engineer. Um, so that's actually why we're doing this. But you'll get actual notification of your specific new class um, sometime in February. What classification does quality assurance fall into? IT developer, I don't know. So again, um, it wouldn't be necessarily everybody in one job title is automatically going to be mapped to a new class. That will be based on your positions, not you specifically your qualifications, but your positions, responsibility, and requirements. So, quality assurance isn't a current actual classification in the classified system. I know that we have working job titles, but again, I can't say for sure what every quality assurance role would fall into, just because, again, there may be jobs that are called quality assurance that might have different duties. So, unfortunately, can't answer that question specifically, but that's how it's done. For IT pay computation, is remote versus on-site have any factoring for pay? Let me just read this real quick to myself. So in terms of pay, um, I, as the study team leader, and this study team, we don't really look at individual pay rates. I cannot say for sure if there are any practices out in the agencies that, will pay more for a particular location. But in terms of this pay study and the pay ranges, the ranges that we've recommended, we do not take that into account. So the next one is, I'm a senior IT analyst. Where does this fall under the IT Pro series? So that is, similar answer to some of the other questions I've answered or that have been asked. I can't say for sure about an individual class placement. It's not like everybody that's a senior IT analyst will automatically be mapped to the same series. It really depends on the individual responsibilities and requirements for your position. All right. Will the letters that are going out in February to classified employees list their new classification and pay range? Yes, that is actually all that those letters will list. It won't say anything about steps. It won't say anything about your new rate, if there even is a change to your rate. It will only say your new classification and your new pay range. And Greg, I did see I think it was you with the no pun intended there, but the question is, what next steps do we need to take? Just wait for our letter and then work with our boss and DPA's HR if we think it should be something else. So yes, I would say wait for your letter so you can see what your new classification will be. And then, if you do have questions about that, yes, I would say that your manager and your HR team would actually be the folks that you'd want to reach out to. Pardon me, I'm getting a few distractions here. Your manager and your HR team, not DPA's HR, at least not as your first point of contact. DPA, we do not know individual positions the way that agencies do. So we typically will rely on agencies to map their positions to new classifications, and then we kind of get together and collaborate in reviewing them, on a high level. But yeah, if you do have questions, I would, go to your manager. I don't know how, different agencies, exactly what processes they use to classify their positions. Your manager may be part of the system maintenance study, so they may have questions. But yes, short answer to that is yes, except I would reach out to your HR team rather than DPA, at least as a first point of contact. Is the new classification going to be non-classified? Now, I know there are some questions and some other things going on around non-classified versus classified. I can't really speak to that. These new classifications are for classified positions. I really can't speak to some, other things that are going on with non-classified versus classified. Really, what my team's focus is the classified pay system, classified pay structure, and those, we sort of own those class descriptions that you see on the DHR website, as well as the pay ranges in the pay plan. Um, but I can't say whether positions will change to non-classified. I can't say anything about that. But for this study, we're talking about classified roles. Would you use as a parameter to decide whether the employee should be in the new classification? So that is based, you mentioned position description in that question. DHR ourselves, we did not look at every single position description. I think across the state, there's something like 400 different positions. So we didn't actually go into every single position description. However, that's also why we rely on agencies to review those position descriptions. Um, and really, again, it's based on the duties and requirements of those positions. So short answer is yes. It would be the position description that would drive the classification of any position. Do we need to do a new position description? No, not at this time. That would also be up to agencies, not necessarily DPA or the study team directly. What does it look like for a manager of multi-departments? I cannot speak to individual, jobs or what they might be, but I will say here the information, and you can see the series descriptions in the JEL, but the information technology series, that obviously information technology is a pretty broad term. It's kind of what we're using now that we are splitting out into new series, but like you say, there are leaders that oversee multiple sub-functions within IT. And I think in a lot of cases, that is where the information technology series will be used because that's sort of what it's intended for sort of those either jacks of all trades or folks that oversee multiple sub-functions. So many of the position minimums may have a degree as a minimum requirement. If employees entered that position when it didn't have such, do we rely on the years of experience in the position to qualify, or do we have to reapply to or get the degree? Minimum qualifications are still being worked on. I don't want to speak too much about the skill-based hiring initiatives that are going on where we're sort of reworking the format of minimum qualifications, but I'll say, typically at the state, we're going to have, sort of substitutions that are available. Um, I mean, generally speaking, the answer to your question would be no, you won't have to reapply to a position. We're not changing anybody's position. We're simply changing the classification on a position. But if you do have questions about your individual class and what that might mean in terms of minimum requirements, definitely feel free. I would start with your HR team, and then we can escalate from there if necessary. Right. I think you just answered this, but to confirm, will the new job description be based on the actual duties that are being performed, or will it be based on the original position description? Well, I would hope that the actual duties being performed are what are in the original position description. And if they are not, I would actually say that that is a separate question from the system maintenance study. I mean, if you're, yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say about that. That would sort of be what we have to assume when we're doing this from sort of the central DPA locations. We have to assume that the defined responsibilities and requirements for the role are how we're classifying the role or how the agencies are classifying the role. Again, it's based on the responsibilities and requirements of the position, not of the individual. What would be the time frame to dispute if needed? If you think that your position description does not match your new classification, or if you have a senior authority that was not taken into consideration. So actually system maintenance studies, and I don't know why I'm not remembering the term, but system maintenance studies are not subject to appeal. What I would say though is if when you get your classification letter and you don't agree with it, you should take your questions to your manager and your HR team. Uh, again, at this time, I can't really speak to individual situations. But, in terms of a dispute, I would more phrase that as, you can ask questions. You can certainly talk to your leadership teams around how or why your particular position was classified. But implementation is set for July 1st, 2024. Um, and we do plan, there's always staffing changes that occur. Like, IT is a little different because I know there's some other factors that play out in the world, but for any system maintenance study, if we're sending you out a letter in February that says one thing, but then you get promoted in June, well, obviously we're going to have to update that. So, there will be slight tweaks to what will happen, but that will typically be due to staffing changes, not necessarily due to a dispute. So tier one, tier two, and three support all paid the same. Sounds like you really don't want to keep higher level techs. So I'm not actually sure what you mean by they're all paid the same. I know that we will have different pay ranges for all of the different classifications within the IT support series. But I can certainly say, it's not necessarily I wanting to keep, any particular classification. Um, but if you do have a more specific question about the new pay ranges um, that we're assigning, you can certainly ask those. But to my knowledge, we don't pay different classifications the same. That's kind of why we have different classifications, part of why we have different classifications, so we can assign different pay ranges. Uh, will the letters be emailed or mailed to our homes? They will be physically mailed to your home. It's actually kind of nifty. We're working with the same team that mails out like the W-2s, and it'll be a good letter that you can have, and documentation that you can refer back to if needed. All right. Will the number and type of position descriptions be re-provided to the department or group in the open so everyone knows what position descriptions are in play in the department? I believe that you already have the ability to request your position description if you don't already have a copy of it. So, if you do want to see a copy of your position description, reach out to your HR team or your manager, and whatever your position description is, that is how that's what defines your responsibilities and requirements of your role, and that's how the positions were mapped to the new classifications. Can you post a link to the old IT professional pay ranges? Absolutely. So we have on the DHR website, there's the section for pay plans. I don't know if Annabelle, if you have that link handy, I can certainly pull it up. But yeah, so when you go to the DHR website, there's a tab at the top that says compensation, and then you can you can hover over that, and you go down to pay plans, and then you can click on this year's pay plan, last year's pay plan. I think it goes all the way back to like fiscal year 17, 18. So yes, we have those, and let me just double check. Great, yes, so we got that posted. Thank you, Annabelle. All right, I see a lot of, oh, we got them still coming in the Q&A. All right, to expand on Mr. Vich's earlier question, if I am being placed into a new job series that I honestly feel doesn't match up with my job responsibilities and duties, will this require a new PDQ in order to officially change it? So the results of a system maintenance study, again, they're not subject to appeal, but if you feel there should be changes made to your position description, you would follow whatever the typical process for that would be for any other situation that would arise. The system maintenance study doesn't really affect that, but certainly encourage you, if you have a honest question about, well, whatever kind of question, you can always go to your manager. That's who I would typically start with, and then, HR if necessary. You can always ask DPA, anything, we're here as a resource, but, typically we'll loop in HR anyway. So sometimes because they were also the ones that we primarily relied upon to map these positions, we'll be referring back to them. So they may be a better place to start. But you would follow the same process that you would in any other situation where you feel like your position description is inaccurate. Are any of the new series classifications considered similar enough so that a change to another classification counts towards a continuation of accumulating time in series? Good question. Um, so for implementation of this system maintenance study, that time in series calculation is not impacted. Now, if in the future you change job series, I'm really glad you asked this question actually. If in the future, then like let's say you move to IT infrastructure on July 1st of this year, and then in 2025, there's a position open that you apply for. And again, I do think there are some other factors at play in the IT world that might impact the answer to this question too. But in general, for a system maintenance study, we'll just say, let's say you are a criminal investigator and you change to field agent, which is one of the new series that we're going to be implementing. And then in the future, you change to forensic scientist. Well, that time in class series starts over because your time in class series is based on your current class series. For system maintenance studies, though, because your position hasn't changed, when we implement the system maintenance study, your position hasn't changed. Your time in series within what you're in now, that will still count. But if then you change again in the future, only your current class series will be used to calculate your time in series. All right, so it's not really a question, but it says so promoting is a bad idea. Um, I personally I would say, progressing in your career is usually a good idea. If you have a specific question about a specific promotional opportunity or classification, uh, you know, you can certainly ask that, but I would say typically, no. Promoting is a good idea. Yeah, there's the note. So I'm going over to the chat now. I see there's a few questions in the chat as well. So we'll go over to that. I saw a bunch of them coming through. Greg, I know we answered yours. I appreciate the pun. Um, got the link to the JEL. Saw most of those questions come in through the Q&A. So thank you all for doing that. So how should we not see this as a high-level shell game at this time? I'm actually not sure what a shell game is. I've heard that term somewhere in the world, but I actually don't know what that word means. Are you anticipating that the average individual will not be taking any pay cut at all for the coming years? Want to make sure for my future. No one's pay will be cut as a result of the system maintenance study. We do have 3 shells, 1P. Um, we do have there's a possibility that if your pay range changes and your current rate is above the max of your pay range, that you'll enter saved pay. You will have more information around your specific situation. But I could say you asked about the average employee. No, the average employee will absolutely not be taking any pay cut at all for the coming years as a result of the system maintenance study. I can't say what might happen elsewhere in the world. Let me take a quick sip here. It's cold. My direct reports positions responsibilities do not include all the duties in the description. Will a data center technician be in the infrastructure group, or will that position have to wait until the letters are sent out? So definitely wait until the letters are sent out before we make any assumptions about what the new series will be. Again, if you do have questions about yourself or your direct reports, you can certainly ask your manager or your HR team about how those positions were mapped in particular. And again, you can always loop us in and then we'll loop your HR team back in. But yeah, I can't say for sure. I don't know what the specific responsibilities of a data center technician are. So so yeah, that's the best way I can answer that question at this time. Sounds good, Randy. Will a manager receive a list of new positions before the letters are sent out? We don't currently have a plan to send um, the classes to a manager at this point. HR teams do already have, as they were, they were the drivers primarily of the mapping process. They do have their uh, current lists of classifications that we'll be using to populate the letter templates with the data, with the information that'll go out to everybody. But we don't, at least from DPA standpoint, we don't currently have a plan to send any information out directly to managers at this time. Okay, give it about maybe a few more moments here. In OIT, you lose your classified status if you're promoted. So again, that's one of those things that I can't really speak to on this call. That's not really a project or a thing that I'm involved in. So, uh, I appreciate you bringing that up, Lisa, but I can't really speak to that today. Okay, well, looks like the questions have sort of slowed down here. So, I think I can speak slowly and then maybe let any other questions that people want to type in come in. But if you think of something later, you can certainly feel free to reach out to any of the emails listed on your screen. Maybe not Kendall just now because she is out for a little while. But again, if for questions about your specific classification, I definitely recommend starting with your manager and or your HR team, whatever is most comfortable. If you're not comfortable doing that, definitely, you can reach out to us. But again, we will loop in the HR team because, you know, um, they know the positions in their own organizations better than we do, and they were the primary drivers of when we mapped these positions. So that's it for today. Thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. We'll be sending those letters soon. You're welcome, Laura.